This is the How to Succeed podcast, and this is how to succeed at avoiding being ghosted with Scott Bliss, our Sandler trainer from New Jersey. I'm your host, Mike Montague, and the How to Succeed podcast here brought to you by Sandler Training, the worldwide leader in sales management and customer service training. Find us at Sandler.com. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening, watching to it right now, watching it, listening to it. Subscribe and share this episode with somebody that you think needs to hear it so they can avoid being ghosted. Here we go. How to succeed at avoiding being ghosted with Scott Bliss. Scott, welcome to the podcast. Tell me a little bit about being ghosted and what we're talking about here today.
Yeah, Mike, thanks for asking. Getting ghosted it's a really painful thing for a salesperson. A lot of times we spend a lot of time, effort, energy, maybe even some resources in the pursuit of a deal. And after we give away all this information, we don't even get the luxury of a callback sometimes or any next steps. And then we find ourselves constantly in chase mode with emails, just checking in, or voicemails, just want to see if you received my information, things like that. And definitely a very painful thing when it happens.
Yeah, the follow-up is rough. When I was dating, I used to have a 3-call limit. It's like if I follow up after a first date, I'll give you 3 tries, but after that, I'm out. I'm just going to assume that's a no. And we've had some another podcast on what to do when you've been ghosted and maybe some recovery tactics you can do to bring those deals back to life. But this time we wanted to really focus on can we do to avoid this in the first place? And I think a lot of those traps come from falling into the stereotypical salesperson role and dealing with buyers the way that people I think have come to expect, but also they think it's okay to ghost salespeople, and we need to do some things up front to avoid that from happening, right?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is a lot of salespeople don't always practice their equal business stature. They don't consider themselves an equal with the people that they're speaking with or presenting information to, and they feel like it's their job to educate and give all this information and not get the things that they need to really be successful in the pursuit of that deal. So that's a big part of it as well.
What are some of the other myths and misconceptions with our attitude? What do we do that causes us to get ghosted?
Equal business stature is a great thing. An attitude-wise mindset. We're not worthy of asking maybe what can be construed as personal questions, right? Or how dare we interrogate the prospect to find out this information? It's none of our business how their decision processes works. It's none of our business to ask them what their budget might be like. So we kind of have this mindset of, let me give them all the information they want and then hope that they choose us. Right?
Yeah. And I would add on to that too, that I think sometimes the misconception is we take like a subservient position, right? It's okay. Like, oh, you're doing us a favor by taking this call or by giving us an opportunity at this deal. And so we should just be happy that you even looked at our stuff, let alone call us back. And that's sort of the opposite of that equal business stature. I think also for me, that attitude of reciprocation and professionalism comes in. And so maybe this is a bunch of different ways of saying the same thing, but I think that a lot of times people don't know how to buy from us, and we need to really do a pattern interrupt here and really explain, this is how our process goes, and this is how I expect you to behave throughout this call. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we're talking about attitude, but that's a technique right there, right? The Sandler upfront contract, right? Very important to set the expectations and get them mutually agreed to from your prospect. And most people just fly by the seat of their pants or go on a whim, or they mind read or expect this is how it's going to go, instead of making themselves a little bit uncomfortable and taking control of the selling interaction and the conversation of, this is how it's going to go. This is what I'm going to do for you. This is what you're going to do for me. And at the end of all this, we'll figure out if we're a good fit to work with each other.
Anything else come to mind in the attitude bucket before we even start a call? Things that we can do to get our head right so we don't get ghosted?
Yeah, I think from the aspect of, we bring value to everybody we speak to. Not everybody we speak to may become a client, but we absolutely bring value to everybody we speak with. And, at this point, when we're talking about avoiding getting ghosted, I think we've already determined that it's probably a good fit for us to continue the conversations, that they want information from us, and it's okay to give that information. And, you need information in return, right? So the best time to get that information in return is before you give them all your information and give them the opportunity to ghost you. So you kind of got to give to get a little bit, but make sure you get what you need because you bring value.
I think that's a great point, and taking personal responsibility for being ghosted. That a lot of times it's easy to blame the prospect and say, "Oh, well, they're not professional, or they wanted to steal the information." But really, it's on us. And I've always kind of come at this because I've been a performer my whole life. Is like, if you get heckled on stage or the audience leaves in the middle of your show, it's not the audience's fault. That's the performer's fault, right? And so if you didn't bring your A game on this call, or you didn't give them a reason to call you back, that's on you. You should have brought something that was like, oh man, I really need to get back to Scott because he's going to save me or make me a bunch of money. Right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And a lot of it is discomfort. People don't want to, deviate from their comfort zone, and doing certain things to avoid getting ghosted is going to make you maybe do or say things that make you a little bit uncomfortable. And most people don't want to do that. So they kind of fall back to their old ways, and they allow it to happen versus, taking the sting of when it does happen and realizing, I hate the way this feels. I spent way too much time, effort, and energy putting together that proposal, and they're not even giving me the common courtesy of a callback. That is absolutely 100% our fault and not the prospect's fault. Without a doubt.
Now, I think that takes us to behavior. So what can we do sort of before, during, and after the call to avoid being ghosted?
Yeah. From a behavior aspect, you have to have a willingness to, again, move outside of that comfort zone and gather the information that you need, which involves asking difficult questions. A big thing, and I know this is probably more technique, but one of the biggest reasons why salespeople get ghosted is they're not necessarily offering the right solution to the problem at hand because they're not taking the time to understand the problem. They're selling to what they think they want to sell and what they want to provide, and not necessarily getting a really good understanding of what the prospect needs. What's the problem, the reason for doing business, and do we have the right solution for that? So it's really a good behavior is to make sure you're asking the right questions to understand the pain, understand the need. Without a doubt, I think that's the first thing.
Yeah, I think a lot of times salespeople try to do demand creation rather than finding out what is going on in their world and why they would want to meet with us. We shouldn't find ourselves in a place where we're trying to convince people to buy or convince people to take a second meeting. They should be opting into this willingly, saying like, oh yeah, this guy's going to solve a problem, or this gal has something of value for me. I'm in on this sales call because it's going to help me. And qualification is just such a huge deal in our world, but it doesn't just stop at the problem, right?
No, not at all. And I've had some of my clients say to me, Scott, I'm getting ghosted when I'm trying to reach out and get meetings with prospects. I'm sending emails and I'm leaving voicemails and I'm doing video emails. That's totally different. That's prospecting. That's trying to get in front of new people to have new conversations, right? And if they're not responding to your reach outs, that's something totally different. That's not being ghosted. You just haven't gotten in front of them. Yeah. When I talk about getting ghosted, I'm talking about where you've already had conversations. You've uncovered a need, depending on how well you uncovered that need, that's another story. But you've uncovered a need. You've uncovered that there is a potential opportunity to do business with this client, and you made the conscious decision to put together some type of presentation or proposal. It could be a dog and pony show. It could be a marketing presentation. It could just be in the form of a quote. It could be specs. However it is that you would potentially solve their problem, it's just giving them that information, and then nothing. You're stuck in FU mode, in New Jersey, FU follow-up mode, right? And I know it sounds different, but in New Jersey, FU mode stands for something totally different. Right. So we just want to make sure we avoid, if we're going to take our time to present our goods and give some type of proposal that we at least get what we need back in return. And that's what I think about when getting ghosted.
And what are some of the reasons we get ghosted, and what can we do about it, or do to avoid it?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is lack of an identified pain or gap from where that customer is today versus where they want to be tomorrow. Maybe we have surface issues, surface indicators, right? That poor quality, poor customer service, they're paying too much money, right? Those are just, that's not really pain. That's just indicative that there's a greater pain that we as salespeople have to be skilled at and really getting down to those three levels of pain, right? Not just the surface level, but the reasons behind it, and then the causes of it, and then how it affects the person we're dealing with personally, right? So true lack of identified pain. The second part of that is so many salespeople are afraid to have the budget conversation. And this could take several meetings, by the way. This all doesn't necessarily happen in one meeting and then boom, you're off to sending a proposal. But if you create an aura of sticker shock, and that typically happens when you have these great conversations, you understand the pain, you think you can solve their problem, it gets you really excited. But if you bypass any type of investment conversation or budget conversation, and then the first time they see your pricing is when they open up that proposal, they're going to look at it, it's going to cause sticker shock. They might say to themselves, this is way more than I thought it would be, or I'm not willing to invest this. And then they pretty much say, we're so far apart that, forget it. I'm just going to go to the next person who might be a lot cheaper, or they just might not get back to you at all because it's out of their investment parameters, right? What they're willing to spend. And that's a big one. Right? Nobody should ever be surprised. You should have a conversation utilizing great third-party stories, right? What a proposal might look like, how much of investment this might be for those folks. And when you have that conversation, you're eliminating that big surprise at the end when they open it up. You want to have it first.
And I guess just to continue on and close out our qualification portion of this discussion is their decision-making process. A lot of times we get ghosted not because they don't think it's a good deal, but it's just not the right time, right?
Yeah.
And their decision-making process is longer or quicker, and we missed it. You know, they had to make a decision and move on and stuff. And so talk to us a little bit about what we need to know there to make sure that we're in a process that they're going to be, responding to us in.
Yeah, sure. If we find ourselves talking to folks and making some type of presentation to them and giving them this information, and then they come back to us at the 11th hour and they say things like, Mike, this looks great. I need to move it up the chain and I need to talk to my boss about it. If that's when we're finding this out, shame on us. It means we're not asking the right questions, really properly qualifying this opportunity and knowing full well how their decision process works. Who else is involved besides them? Where is it made in the organization, a decision? Who has veto power? Are the people that can say yes, on the call? Are you going to have an opportunity to get in front of the people that can say yes? Are you going to have an opportunity to get in front of people that can say no? Right. But again, going back to like the budget, we don't want to surprise them with sticker shock. Same thing with the decision-making process. We don't want to be surprised at the end that other people are responsible for making the decision and we don't know them and we don't know who they are and we don't have any access to them. So we want to kind of nip that all in the bud and have that all up front before we even send in the proposal or the presentation.
I love that. Next one for me, and it might take us to the technique portion of our discussion here, but talk a little bit about going for the no. And I think the number one reason maybe that salespeople get ghosted is commission breath. They get more excited about the sale than the buyer is, or they push people away by trying to push too hard for a yes or move it too fast. And then the buyer would rather not talk to you at all than get a pushy salesperson on the line, right?
Yeah. And that all boils back down to bonding and rapport. All right. Are you that show up and throw up kind of guy talking about all these features and benefits, really trying to get a yes? Or are you that person that's really asking a lot of questions, nurturing questions, really trying to find out what the problem is they're trying to solve, really trying to understand, can you offer them a solution? to that problem. And from a technique perspective, you also want to make sure that you set up mutually agreed to expectations all along the way for every meeting, what's going to happen at every meeting. And again, it goes back to the Sandler upfront contract, right? Of saying, this is what we're going to discuss. We're going to talk about pricing. We are going to talk about authority and decision-making process. And by the way, if you don't think this is going to work for you, or if you don't think this is a good fit, it's absolutely 100% okay for you to tell us no, that you've either chosen someone else, or a lot of times people just, a decision to not make a decision is a decision, right? They just don't do anything. And that's fine too. Let us know, and utilize third-party stories and say, listen, I had another prospect I was talking to, thought everything was going great, sent them information, never heard back from them. They ignored my voicemails, my emails. I want to make sure that doesn't happen here. Right. So setting those expectations to make sure that they're comfortable giving you a no, or sharing with you that they're just not doing anything right now. The timing's not right. Let them know.
Yeah. Now, any other techniques come to mind for you that you think will help us avoid being ghosted?
Yeah. Questioning strategies, right? Reversing, using the curiosity curve. Third-party stories are great. A third-party story can very easily take the place of a pitch, where you're not pitching something, but you're sharing information on how you helped others in a similar situation. A third-party story also enables you to share with them that one of your biggest fears is getting ghosted, sharing all this information, not getting a response, and you want to make sure that doesn't happen here. What can we do to make sure that doesn't happen, right? So you're kind of setting that expectation up front. And at Sandler, we talk a lot about the 5 seconds of guts, right? It takes guts. It definitely pulls you out of your comfort zone. I have salespeople tell me all the time, I could never give a prospect permission to tell me no. What if they tell me no? And they don't realize that is such a major win for them. To get a no early is like the second best thing you can hear on a sales call.
I love that Sandler rule for sure. No is the second best answer most of the time, especially a quick no. And that was my favorite technique. I think biggest fear is huge, of just saying, hey, my biggest fear is I'm going to follow up with somebody that doesn't want to be followed up with, or I'm going to be bugging you and interrupting. So you tell me, when would you like me to follow up with you, or when will you have an answer? And then my favorite reverse you mentioned, and second to inspect that, is, what do we do if that doesn't happen? So if they're like, yeah, we'll call you back on Monday and let you know what we decided. Okay, perfect. What if I don't hear from you on Monday? Should I call you? Give it a couple days. What would you like me to do if I don't hear from you on Monday?
Yeah.
And getting really clear about what those are really helps you from being ghosted. And it sets the expectation that they go, oh no, if you don't hear from me, I expect a call from you, and you're going to follow up on this. And now they can't be mad at you for doing what they told you to do.
Right. Or even saying, when they say we're going to call you on Monday, say, hey, let's do this. Let's take 30 seconds. Let's take out our calendars. And so I know what time to expect your call, so I can make sure I'm available. And this way we're not chasing each other with voicemails and texts and emails. And if they're not willing to do that, they might not be that serious when you really think about it. Right. So,
and I do think it's fair to just, even say, hey, shoot me a quick text and say, oh, I got hung up, or it's going to take longer, whatever. You can set a lot of expectations. They don't have to be wishy-washy, follow up with me someday. We can get really specific with this. I love what you said about, let's pick the time. Let's do it now. Find time on the calendar, or, being upfront, we don't need a long conversation. It can be a yes or a no at this point. Text me yes or no, or sorry, we went with somebody else. I don't care. I'm a grown adult. I'm a salesperson. I can handle a no, but I need to hear that from you so that I can take it off my books and move on. Right.
Close the file, right?
Kind of things are tough. Yeah.
We know at Sandler, no stands for next opportunity, right? So give them that permission to tell you no. And, I also tell a lot of my clients too, that as you're going through this process and as you're getting out of your comfort zone and asking these questions and utilizing third-party stories and, asking them to take out their calendar so you can book that next conversation. As you're doing that, you're building great trust with your prospect. And they might say things that you'll never hear. They might say, after they hang up a call with you, wow, he was pretty thorough, asked me some great questions, really challenged us and made us think, and took control of the conversation. That's the type of people we want to work with. And he didn't try and sell us anything. He just came in here trying to really understand what's going on, how they can help. And, he's a little bit more expensive than the other guy we spoke to, but that's someone I'd like to work with. He brings value. We trust that person, right? And that happens quite a bit. You might never hear it, but as you look at your closing ratio and as they start increasing and improving, because you're getting braver, you'll definitely notice that.
That's a great one to end on, but I do want to give you one more shot. Anything else we missed, a question I should have asked, or anything you want to share on being ghosted?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you might lose a deal just based on the fact that they like somebody else better, or somebody else is fit within their budget better, and that's okay. You can still make a concerted effort to go after a deal, but you want to make sure you properly qualify it. Understand the true reason for doing business. It's not always about fixing a problem. It might be about making something more pleasurable, right? But fully understand the need for doing business. Don't be afraid to talk about money and have that investment conversation so you don't create that sticker shock. And absolutely know about the decision-making process, know who's involved, and set up the proper expectations. Let them know it's okay to say no. Let them know that you're going to call them on Tuesday. Get it on the calendar. And, you want to make sure that you spend your time in your areas of highest potential. And if you do all that, I promise you, you will not get ghosted. You'll get no's from people. You'll get no thank yous, but you will not get ghosted.
Love it. Again, we've been talking with Scott Bliss, longtime Sandler trainer from New Jersey. And if you want more information on Sandler, go to sandler.com. Ton of free resources. There's other podcasts on being ghosted and qualification and things that will help you out with this. So check out those. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, share it with somebody that you think needs to hear it. But Scott, before we let you go, I want to ask you, we've shared several Sandler rules today here, but is there one particular Sandler rule, and feel free to repeat yourself here, on being ghosted that you think people need to keep in mind?
I have two. I'm going to give you two. The first one is the true value of a salesperson. And I always put in parentheses, your commission or your bonus is based more on the amount of information you gather, not what you dispense. So it's okay to educate your customer, your prospect, tell them how you're going to help them, but make sure you gather back the information you need, which essentially is your solution solving their problem within an allotted budget or investment parameter that they know of and agree with, and that you're fully aware of their decision-making process, who's involved, what the timeline is, when it's going to be made. So properly qualifying that opportunity, that rule really hits home to me, because that's what our value is all about, gathering information. And the second part is equal business stature. It doesn't matter if you're dealing with a CEO, a VP, even if you're just a salesperson, consider yourself the CEO or VP of your territory. Don't put them up on a pedestal. Don't put your prospect here and yourself down here. It's equal, right? You have the right to ask certain questions. You have the right to gather information and get it from them before you give them everything, because it's harder to get them on the phone after you've already given them everything.
Yeah, I love that. I'll add one that we put in the new book, How to Sell to the Modern Buyer, is the SW4 rule, which is some will, some won't, someone's waiting, so what? Next, like, how do you move to the next opportunity? And if you take the yeses, you take the nos, and you move on, you're great. There is a fifth one we didn't add into the book, which is stop whining, which is another good one. But the SW4 is really great to just remember when you're thinking like, you're really upset that you got ghosted, or you had one of those bad days and you messed it up. It's like, so what? Next up, do better on the next one, bring more value, ask better questions, get clear on those upfront contracts, and avoid being ghosted. Scott, thank you so much for being on the show. Again, Sandler is at sandler.com. Hopefully you have found that by now. Put all those free resources and subscribe to the podcast. But if not, reach out. We have over 200 locations. We have an enterprise team for those big enterprise businesses that have complicated multi-language, country or location businesses, you can reach out to them as well. And lots of fun free events like our virtual summit, recordings from the Sandler Summit, or other live webinars every month. So until next time, whatever you are, be a good one. We'll see ya. Have a great week, everybody.
Everybody, thanks, Mike.